Are you planning a trip to Kyoto and are worried about the insane crowds or just how to get around? Kyoto is magical, but it can be overwhelming for first-timers. In this video, I'm sharing 13 essential tips that will help you save stress and time, including the one mistake most tourists make with public transport. Hi, I'm Beck. Let's get you ready for Kyoto. I'm going to break this video down into 4 sections: transport, accommodation, activities and attractions, and general information. Let's start with transport. And my first tip is to try not to rely on buses in Kyoto. Public transport in Kyoto is a lot more sparse than Tokyo, Hiroshima, and other major cities in Japan. As a result, the bus network is the more comprehensive public transport option. However, this leads to buses being quite popular with locals, and buses do not hold as many passengers as trains do. This leads to significant demand for services and jam-packed buses, especially for the 205 bus that covers the downtown area, several train stations, and several attractions like Kinkakuji. Whilst Kyoto has tried to mitigate the issue by introducing more buses to the 205 route and an express bus for tourists, however, these tourist express buses only run on weekends, national holidays, and during peak travel periods. I recommend, where possible, avoiding using the bus, especially the 205, and try to use the train network. Or if you have the budget for it, use taxi services like Go and Uber. One thing I have noticed when using the buses in Kyoto and beyond is that tourists seem confused as to how to pay. The majority of buses will have the option to use Suica, which you'll tap on when you get on the bus and then tap off when you get off the bus. If you're using cash, you are required to pay the amount that is on the screen at the front of the bus. This is usually shown between showing what stops are next. Make sure you have plenty of coins. Don't be that person that wants to pay with a 1,000 yen note when it's only like a 200 yen fare. Starting in March 2026, the Kyoto Accommodation tax is increasing for all hotels. The increases for hotels under 49,999 yen per night, their increases are pretty modest, but for the more high-end hotels, the increase is jumping from 1,000 yen to 4,000 yen per night, or from 1,000 yen a night to 10,000 yen a night for those hotels that cost over 100,000 yen per night. It is important to remember that Kyoto is not the only city in Japan that has the accommodation tax, and it's also worth noting that other countries have accommodation taxes as well. Since 2018, Japan has had short-stay accommodation regulations under the Minpaku law, but recently Kyoto has announced they're strengthening these laws due to complaints from neighbours in regards to noise and rubbish and other general behavioural issues. Starting in February 2026, owners will need to submit regular reports about occupancy. Inspections of short-stay accommodation will be happening early in the morning and late in the evening to ensure that properties are complying with the laws. Technically, in some parts of Kyoto, short-stay accommodation can only be used between 15th of January to 15th of March each year. If you do decide to use short-stay accommodation, I recommend doing your research on the property and where it is, and if you can see any previous reviews from previous visitors. I also recommend that you set aside enough funds to cover any accommodation costs that you may need to incur if you have to leave that short stay property. To be brutally honest, there is better options in Japan for accommodation outside of short stay. If you're traveling as a family, Mimaru offers some great options. We stayed there on our first trip to Kyoto, and they have hotels in Kyoto, Osaka, and Tokyo. I've also heard that Min Hotels is great for groups and families. Let's move on to activities and attractions. Tip 5 is to consider your own comfort. If you're planning on visiting lots of temples and shrines, make sure you're wearing shoes that are easy to take off, and also take clean socks with you, especially if you're wearing thongs or Crocs. A lot of paths around temples and shrines are not always sealed, so if you're planning on wearing heels, this may not be a great idea, and bring a second pair of shoes just in case. Tip 6 is in regards to Teamlabs Kyoto, and also an extension, anything that requires extensive booking. So like the Nintendo Museum. Teamlab BioVortex opened in October 2025 and has been quite popular with both locals and tourists. If you're wanting to go the next time you're in Kyoto, I highly recommend booking in advance either through the Teamlab website or through Klook. Sometimes tickets may be available on the day, but it's worth booking to avoid disappointment. Tip 7 is to plan your days and know that you may have to be flexible with your plans. Make a list of the places that you definitely want to see each day. If you're a late starter, look at going to popular areas such as Fushimi later in the day, or if you're an early bird, look at getting there very early in the day. You're never going to fully beat the tourist crowd, but you can minimize your exposure to the peak times. Next is PokeLids. If you're trying to collect PokeLids, Kyoto has 8 PokeLids, including 3 at Uji. However, for the last one in Uji, you will need a ticket to the Nintendo Museum because it's in their grounds. For more information, I highly recommend checking out the PokeLids website, and I'll link to that in the pinned comment below. And my last tip for activities and attractions is to go beyond Kyoto Central. Kyoto has a lot to offer outside of the main city. Uji and Okabo are easily accessible on the JR Nara line. Yamato has several shrines and temples and is where the Uji, Katsura and Kizu rivers meet. You don't have to stay to the usual tourist haunts of Kyoto, such as Arashiyama, if you've been there before. And the last section is general information. So a lot of this information will also apply to other parts of Japan, not just Kyoto. First is have a bag for your rubbish. Much like the rest of Japan, bins are quite scarce. So make sure you bring like a resealable Ziploc bag with you. Just to carry your garbage around. Second tip, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed, is to check out parks. If you need a break from the crowds, heading to a park is great. Grab some food from a konbini and check on Google Maps where your closest park is. If you're in Gion, I highly recommend heading to Maruyama Park next to Yasaka Shrine, and Kyoto Gion at the Imperial Palace is also really nice to spend time in and to relax. Now, luggage. As mentioned before, space is quite limited on public transport, especially the buses. So lugging suitcases through busy stations and onto packed buses is not great for anyone involved. I highly recommend using a luggage transfer service such as Yamato. The cost can vary per bag, but the most we've ever paid for 2 massive suitcases is 4,000 yen. And honestly, it's worth it for the peace of mind. Finally, my final tip is, and again, this will apply to everywhere in Japan or anywhere where you travel, or even in your home country. Be respectful. Remember that yes, you may be on holiday, but people actually live in Kyoto. A shock, I know. Be mindful of this and don't block the sidewalk in busy areas by stopping in the middle or pull off to the side. To be honest, these are not things that are just a problem in Kyoto or Japan. It's a problem anywhere where there may be tourists. And I can assure you, regardless of where you are traveling in the world, it does piss the locals off. If there's signage saying no photography or filming, don't take photos or film. Easy. Bad tourists make all tourists look bad, and let's try and be respectful in 2026, hey? Kyoto is a wonderful place and you should absolutely visit. Yes, there is issues with over-tourism, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on if you'd like me to in another video. I've placed links to the websites that I've mentioned during this video in the pinned post below. If you've been to Kyoto before, let me know what your tips would be for somebody visiting for the first time. And if you're planning to visit Kyoto for the first time, let me know what you found helpful. We have more videos about Kyoto. I think this one will be helpful to you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.